Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. I'm Dan Casper. As always, big thanks for tuning in. Hey, quick before we get into our topics of conversation on this episode, don't forget to follow and subscribe to the Man Cave Podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts, because sometimes we will we'll drop a couple episodes. But also, if you could, give us a 5-star rating and a positive review so others can find the podcast. On this episode, we're going to talk a little Packers. Jordan Love got paid. We'll hit that up. Also, first week of training camp in the books. What has stood out to me the most? But let's lead off with the big story. Jordan Love in a 4-year, $220 million extension, making him the highest paid quarterback in history. Brian Gutekunst saying Saturday morning that it was kind of in the price range of what they thought it was going to take. It kind of seems like that maybe, excuse me, kind of lose my voice here a little bit. It kind of seems like maybe the sticking point was the years thing. So Jordan gets a 4-year extension. Because remember, the longer the extension is, the better it is for the Packers, because it potentially, could look like a bargain after a few years. So Jordan gets the 4-year extension out there, is able to kind of renegotiate or get a new contract, if you will, before he even hits the age of 30, which is a big, big thing for Jordan Love, especially if he continues to play at a very, very high level and will be able to cash in with another big-time contract over there. So, let's reset this now. Jordan Love gets a 4-year, $220 million extension. Highest paid quarterback. I don't think we should be too surprised at the numbers, given how the impacts, or given how the market is for quarterbacks right now. Yes, you can make the case, well, he only played, had 8, 9, 10 games, and you're making him the highest paid player off that. I understand that. But that's how the NFL world works. That's how pro sports work. You don't have to like it. That's just the way it is. And we have to remember, too, when it comes to these contracts, they're out there designed for you're paying these players based off what they're going to do for you in the future. Now, I understand, too, you're not going to give a big contract to somebody. Not all the time, Jackson Cheerio being the outlier in this one. But you're not going to give a contract to somebody if you haven't at least seen something from them, right? I mean, if Jordan Love didn't play that well last year, then no, you're probably not giving them a big deal. So yes, you are giving them a big contract based a little bit off of what they have done for you lately. But for the most part, like Andrew Brandt says, these contracts, you're paying them for what you expect them to do for you in the future. My thing now is, and this is a big question that a lot of people are going to have surrounding Jordan Love. By the way, I don't mind the deal. I'm just glad it's done. Glad it's over with. Let's move on with football. Brian Gutekunst said that, hey, they've got some cap flexibility for the next couple of years here. Later on in the contract, there's going to be some tough decisions to be made. I think part of that, though, too, is because he's got such a young roster. You've got guys under rookie deals. So, yes, you have some flexibility within your roster, but a couple of years, that's going to change when you got to start to pay some of these young guys who have been playing incredibly well. But I think when it comes to Jordan Love now, the question that a lot of people have, the biggest question that a lot of people have surrounding him is he going to live up to that contract? Is he going to continue to play at a high level? Is he going to continue to get better? I mean, I think a lot of us would love to have the conversation in a couple years where we're saying, yep, that's a bargain deal now. I mean, that's what we're hoping, right? And to me, what's going to be what's going to be interesting for Love is how does he handle this pressure? Because last year he was under pressure. This is a different type of pressure this year. This is a different type of pressure this year for Jordan Love. Last year he was under the pressure of, I got to prove myself. I got to prove myself that I'm a starting quarterback in this league. I got to prove myself to everybody out there that I am the long-term starter for the Green Bay Packers. That I am the heir apparent to one Aaron Rodgers. I've got one season. While other guys have a couple seasons as a starter to prove themselves, I've got one season essentially as a starter to prove I am the guy. And to replace a legend like an Aaron Rodgers, that's pressure. That's pressure. Now he's under a little bit of a different pressure to say, or to go out there and be like, okay, now I got to prove why Green Bay gave me this deal. I've got this pressure now where I got to go out there and show the world why I'm worth this, why I'm worth this big deal. It's a little bit of a different pressure. And I believe, because in 2008, you had Aaron Rodgers got that extension. His first year starting, he got an extension on Halloween. And, Green Bay took a risk, right? They got to see him for a few games. They probably felt a little bit better the year prior when, that Cowboys game, right? That Thursday Cowboys game. Where you're like, oh, you got a glimpse. But after a few games in that 2008 season, they locked him up for a few years. Where I feel like it's a little bit of a different pressure for Love is that Aaron at that time didn't really have, he was highly compensated, but he never had really the title at that point of highest paid. Highest paid. He never had that title. And at that point in the season 2, that was, remember, they didn't make the postseason that year. They ended up finishing 6-10. And you had some good games there, but and that team was coming off of an NFC Championship appearance, so there was expectations heading into that season, no question about it. And it was definitely a disappointing season all around. But that season, while it was going on, it was like, yeah, okay. Whereas Love, he has that pressure now of having that label for however long it's going to be, but having that label of highest paid. That's added extra pressure because we have it in our minds that if you were the highest paid, you must be the best. You got to be one of the best, and you should be. You absolutely should be. Doesn't always work that way, but once you get that label, you should be one of the best in the biz. So he's going to have that added extra pressure. He's also going to have the added extra pressure of like, okay, you led your team in your first year to the postseason. You won a postseason game. You were maybe a couple plays away from going to the NFC Championship game. How do you get back to that? But how do you take that up another step? Your second year, second year as a starter, we've got Super Bowl goals. Super Bowl goals in your second year. So not only do you have the pressure of being labeled as the highest paid quarterback in your second year as a starter, now you're going to have the pressure of like Super Bowl in your second year as a starter. We're expecting Super Bowls now. And I don't know if it'll be this year, but I can see this happening in the next few years. Jordan Love era continues to roll and that. There's going to be this talk and this topic. Again, I don't think it'll be this year. It'll probably be after he wins his first one. Can he do something that Rodgers and Favre, for whatever reasons, couldn't do? I'm not putting the blame solely on those two guys. But can he do something those two couldn't? Win multiple Super Bowls. Not one, but multiple. You got to start with one. But I've got a feeling that eventually that is going to be a topic, a talking point. Can he be a guy that can lead you to multiple Super Bowl championships? Because if you ask a lot of Packers fans to look back at the Rodgers and the Favre eras, a lot will say Should have been more. There should have been more championships for whatever reason. And I don't think it's solely on those two guys. But that's going to be, I predict, at some point down the line, if Jordan happens to win a Super Bowl with Green Bay, there's going to be that little maybe added extra pressure. Maybe it's more of a fan thing to be, can he win multiple? Do something that Favre and Rodgers couldn't. I love one of Jordan's quotes that he used last year. Pressure is a privilege. Pressure is a privilege. There is no other quarterback right now in this league that I think has more pressure on him right now than Jordan Love. And you can look at some of the rookies like Caleb Williams is under a ton of pressure, to be the guy finally for the Bears. They're a long-term solution at quarterback, but he's also a rookie. He's going to have a little leeway right away. Tua got a big deal there too. But you got to see Tua for the last couple of years, and he thrives within this offense. The biggest thing is, can he just stay healthy? You're talking about a guy, you just made him the highest paid quarterback ever after 1 year and essentially 8, 9, 10 really good games. Jordan Love's under a ton of pressure. And if pressure is a privilege, and he lives by that credo, well, dude, you've got a lot of pressure heading your way this year and for the next couple years, next few years. Embrace it, man. And I'm excited to see that. As a fan, I'm excited to see what Jordan Love can do next. There's this, and I think it depends on how athletes, people embrace it. There's this notion of like, okay, you got your money now. There's that pressure of living up to it. There's also some people have the mindset of like, oh, okay, so now that they got their money, are they actually going to, try to put a lot more effort into it? Instead of like using that as a motivation to go out there and play at a high level so you get paid. Do these players, do they lose a little bit after they get paid because maybe that motivation isn't there? I think it depends on the player. I think it depends on the person. And in this case, I hope Love is one of those that uses the pressure like, okay, yeah, I got paid, but now I got to use that as motivation to go out there and show why I got paid. I'm sure some will go out there, and it's happened before, but I'm sure there's some athletes, some people out there be like, okay, I got paid. I can maybe take the foot off the gas a little bit. I got my security. I don't have that motivation to go out there and play for a big deal. I mean, we see that in sports all the time, right? Player enters that contract year, and all of a sudden they just have a career year. And then they get their big deal, and then nothing after that. A Packer that comes to mind right now is Nick Perry. Remember? Had that great, really good career year. Goes into a free agent class that didn't have a ton of edge rushers. Got a nice deal from Green Bay. Flamed out after that. Not trying to pick on Nick Perry, but that's an example. So I know there's some concern from fans like, oh, guy got his deal, Now is he going to be motivated out there? We'll see. But it depends on the player. It depends on the person. What do you use to motivate? And I feel like Jordan's going to have that motivation to like go out there and be like, okay, now I've got this pressure to live up to that contract, to play up to that contract. That's my motivation to prove that I'm worth it. To prove that I'm the dude. To prove that I'm the guy. And maybe there's a little bit more too, because he's the third guy. He's the third guy, the third straight quarterback. Favre, Rodgers. Now you got Love. What can he do that would create his own legacy separate from those two? Favre was the guy that kind of helped to resurrect a franchise. Gunslinger, 3-time MVP, 3 years in a row, Won a Super Bowl, went to 2 of them. Rodgers follows that up by probably right now being the most accurate passer of all time in the NFL. Complete opposite of what Brett Favre was. Wins 1 more MVP than what Favre did. Wins 4. Wins the same amount of Super Bowl championships. Only went to 1, though. Broke a lot of his franchise records. So, how does Jordan Love carve out his own legacy? That's going to be fun to watch as his career plays out. And I can't wait to see when it's all said and done, to see how those 3 kind of like, how different are they, right? Because when we did it with Favre and Rodgers, it was like, man, Rodgers is completely different than Favre. Favre's got the gunslinging mentality. He's throwing that ball all over the place. Then you got Rodgers, who's like, dude throws more than 6 interceptions in a season. You're wondering what the heck is wrong with the guy. So I'm excited to see the legacy that Jordan Love's about to carve out for his Packers tenure. And I feel like, we can't predict the future, obviously. Some people think they can. But we don't know how it's all going to shake out with Love. But I got to tell you, I'm excited for this season. I'm excited for every season, whether it's Brewers, Badgers, Bucks, Packers, and all that. But man, I'm last year I had the expectation of like, I don't know what to expect. I went in with no expectations, okay? I didn't know what to expect from this team. I didn't know what to expect from Jordan Love. I didn't know what to expect from all these rookies, the rookie tight ends. I mean, there was enthusiasm. There was like, oh, okay, I like some of those moves. Okay. Now when you factor in everything, Love's done. You don't have to worry about that. This new defense coming in. Growth in years 2 and 3 for some of these guys. I'm pumped. And it also is probably going to wear a little bit more on my blood pressure and my anxiety this year, where last year I was like, okay, yeah, had a little bit lower expectations, didn't know what to expect. This year I've got higher expectations, so now it's like I'm going to be living on the edge of my seat throughout all season, just like it was during the Rodgers eras and the Favre eras. But pressure is a privilege. I'd rather be in a situation where I've got these expectations and these high, lofty goals than just be like, I hope we win a couple games this year. And we've been seeing him get some more play at guard. And Matt LaFleur talked a little bit about the offensive line over the weekend. Said at some point you'd like to get some continuity among the starting 5. I don't want to read into it. We've had one padded practice. I think it'll sort itself out the longer we get into this thing. And about Jordan Morgan, he said, I think he's starting to feel more and more comfortable inside, but I think he's talented enough, if need be, that if we have to kick him outside, we can do that. So it just seems like right now, Jordan Morgan, and that was going back to the draft process. There was a lot of NFL people, scouts, analysts thought he would transition better, even though he was a left tackle in college. There was that thought that his best position in the NFL would be guard. And OTAs and offseason stuff, Jordan Morgan, he repped that tackle, but he has been almost exclusively in guard so far in training camp. Now, it's one weekend. I don't want to read a ton into that, but I think it's also of note to kind of see where that has been going right now, because to me, the offensive line is the position group to watch in this training camp. The main position group to watch. We know Elton Jenkins is a starter. We know Zach Tom is a starter. Josh Myers probably going to be the starter at center. And now it looks like maybe Walker's going to be your left tackle. So, I mean, is the main battle between Sean Rhyan and Jordan Morgan for the starting right guard spot. And we're seeing a lot of mixing and matching. I mean, Elton Jenkins maybe is the backup center, or, he's been getting a lot of center reps with Zach Tom kind of easing back on in. I mean, we saw Sean Rhyan the other day taking some snaps at the center. So, to me, it's going to be really interesting to see how this whole position group kind of plays out. Because when you look at the depth, and we know in this past draft, Green Bay really, they drafted a few offensive linemen. You have Monk on there, who I think could potentially be the starting center maybe in the next couple of years. You got Andre Dillard, the veteran. They're really high on Luke Tenuta last year, but he got hurt. You haven't really heard a whole lot about Royce Newman so far this year. So and then you got Telfort, who's getting some looks early on in the first week. So, yeah, I think we're going to, I know Matt LaFleur wants to see this group kind of, the top five. I didn't even mention the massive Caleb Jones in this thing, too. And I know he's been dinged up a little bit, but Matt LaFleur wants that starting five to kind of work its way and kind of rise to the top, right? The cream rises to the top. And maybe after a couple weeks, especially when we get to preseason games, that'll start to play out. But I don't have after one weekend, I don't know if I've got a better sense of how this offensive line is going to look, other than the fact that it sure seems like Jordan Morgan, if he's going to get on the field as a starter, he might have to beat out Sean Ryan for that job. Because it sure seems like it's going to be Walker at left tackle, Elton Jenkins at his left guard spot, Josh Myers at center, Zach Tom at right tackle. But don't be surprised if Jordan Morgan isn't a starter in year one. And I know that's going to upset some fans too, because he's a first-round pick. But Green Bay's done it before. And it worked out with Brian Bulaga. Bulaga wasn't a starter right away. He wasn't a starter right away, but Mark Tauscher got hurt. In steps Brian Bulaga, Super Bowl. So, yeah. That to me has been the most interesting thing to follow along in training camp so far. And I know the other one is the kicking. I know some of you have kind of reached out and said, the kicking battle and such. And it seems like Anders and Anders Carlson and is doing fairly well right now. He's doing fairly well, but it seems like he's in a battle with Greg Joseph right now. Packers giving them plenty of chances to go back and forth. Seems like, though, the dude, every practice it seems like there's a guy that kind of stands out or has himself to practice, right? I mean, last week we were talking about Rashawn Gary. Then it was Eric Stokes. But the man of the hour yesterday might have been Kalen King, the 7th-round rookie pick, who had a quote-unquote pick six, or would have been a pick six, or close to a pick six. Jordan Love was able to kind of like redirect him out of bounds and such. But Kalen King intercepting the new highest-paid quarterback, and it seems like he has been showing some flashes in training camp. But I think that was a popular pick. I mean, he's my pick for the guy to watch, our Lindsey Pipkins watch list. Every year I pick a training camp preseason player that may surprise people, but I think when he was first drafted, 7th round pick and 255 overall, and you started to hear, well, he could have potentially been a first round pick the year prior, and you hear this positive stuff, from Bill Belichick and Jayden Reed tweeting about him and such. It's not a surprise that a lot of people kind of had like, oh, okay, maybe that's a steal of the pick. And so, I mean, that's probably not the biggest, bold prediction out there. But, I mean, if Green Bay again hits on another 7th-round corner, and it's way, way, way too early to be saying they hit on him. But, I mean, last year, Carrington Valentine was that guy. 7th-rounder, got thrown into the mix right away because of injuries and such, and he performed well. Kalen King, I think, is that guy that and remember, too, Green Bay doesn't have a ton of undrafted free agents this year. I mean, their roster is loaded with a lot of young talent, but they didn't have a lot of roster spots opened up for undrafted free agents this year. So when you look at it, Kalen King's probably that late pick or that guy that, maybe is a little bit on the bottom of the depth chart, but a lot of fans have kind of their eyes on him. And kind of hoping that, hey, could we have maybe hit on another late pick there too? All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And don't forget to check out the Swag Cave, brought to you by our good friends from Resonance Branding Company. That link is in the podcast description. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.